What's going on, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation First and 10, your Vegas Nation go-to for Raider news and analysis. We are here at Raiders facility, Raiders headquarters in Henderson, Nevada, after a very busy day 2 of the NFL draft. Day 2, for those of you who don't know, covers the second and third rounds. We're going to get right to it. Before I do that, I just want to remind everybody that all of Vegas Nation's podcasts, including First and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STM Sports. I am Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Raiders for Vegas Nation. This is Adam Hill. He covers the Raiders as well for Vegas Nation, among other things, in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And let's get right to it. John Spytek, the Raiders general manager, made mention yesterday after round 1 that kind of hinted at maybe some trades coming, or a trade coming. They had pick number 37 in the second round, which was the 5th pick overall in the second round. And soon that became number 48. And then from 48 to 58. So they went from 37 all the way down to 58. But before you go crazy over that, they also picked up 2 extra third-round picks and pick swapped with the Miami Dolphins to move up back into the 4th round, from the 5th round to the 4th round. So long story short, when you add in Ashton Jeanty, who was selected in the 1st round on Thursday, the Raiders ended up with 5 players within the first 100 players selected. And when you add tomorrow the 6th or the 4th round pick at number 108, that means they have 6 picks within the first 108 picks. And I think it's important to say that, Adam, because everyone, at least that I have talked to about this NFL draft, has mentioned, look, there's not really the big star names like last year, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams, obviously, Malik Neighbors. There were some star players in last year's draft. Not so much this year, but in the name of give and take, sometimes you give up the big time stars for what I think this draft represents, which is great depth. And so you might not be getting the star players, but as you get into day 2 and even day 3, there's a chance to get guys that are going to help you potentially as early as this year as rookie starters. And I think what John basically said was, let's try to load up in that 2nd and 3rd round, which he considered the meat of this draft, and mission accomplished. Yeah,
it's one of the reasons I was screaming yesterday about trying to trade down, but it's also why other teams might not have been willing to trade down. Right?
Two to tango, right?
You can't just wave a magic wand and say you're trading down. That's something to look at. But yeah, I thought that was part of what this draft was. There's a lot of players that are going to be contributors. A lot of guys are going to be able to play, but maybe not necessarily. And I'm sure some of them will eventually become and develop stars.
Mm-hmm. Starters, if not stars.
No, but I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be starters.
Starters, yeah. I said stars.
Some of them will eventually become stars. You just don't know. It's harder to identify maybe which ones those
Who's
are.
Gonna pop.
So it's really, hey, get a bunch of guys that can contribute, help you out, be a part of your roster. And the Raiders need a whole lot of guys to be a part of their roster, whether it's starters, whether it's backups, part of the 2 deep. Like they need players that are going to contribute this year and be a part of the team this year,
and can contribute.
Yeah,
at a higher level than what's been happening around here.
Sure.
For the last few years.
Sure, and so those are some of the guys they're looking for, and they traded down. I don't think you say 5 of the first 100, which is true. It's 2 of the first 65, which maybe that's kind of where you usually are necessarily in the draft. It's not great. You could have picked a little higher, maybe got a little better player, but I think you're probably better off going down, getting additional assets. And you saw what they were able to do at the end of the 3rd round, right? It's okay. You have back-to-back picks right at the end of that 3rd round tonight. Some of the last picks of the night. You double up on the offensive line, and what does that do? I can't believe I'm saying this because I hate this expression so much, but I'm going to say the cliche. It's multiple bites at the apple.
I call it multiple rings at the bell. I've been starting to go in that direction.
Okay, sure, but it's okay. Hey, maybe these guys don't work out at the end of the 3rd round. Maybe one of them does. Maybe both of them do. Mm-hmm. But it gives you more chances,
correct,
to be able to find guys that are going to contribute next season. And so you go, okay, back-to-back offensive linemen. Let's see how that works out. That's what enables you to do when you arm yourself with picks, which is one of the reasons that there is such a new wave approach to acquiring picks and accumulating a lot of picks and being able to take a lot of different guys and putting different guys on your roster that are capable of contributing.
Yeah, I always bring this up. When I covered the Rams, Les Snead was always chided in some ways.
Well, there's an expression that was made famous.
Yes, exactly. Because he went from 2018, I want to say, till 2022 or 23 maybe, without having a first-round pick. He kept trading first-round picks, whether it was for established players like, Jaden. The cornerback, like Jalen Ramsey and Brandon Cooks, and wide receiver, and Matthew Stafford, and trading up to get, Jared Goff. There were a lot of reasons why, and they didn't have first round picks, but a lot of people just assumed, I guess, Lesney doesn't like draft picks. The irony is, the Rams executed, I think, the second most draft picks from 2016 till whatever we were talking about. Why? Because they would trade down. They would play the comp game. So he actually valued draft picks quite a bit and has built some pretty darn good football teams through that. But to your point, you get as many as you possibly can. Yeah. And sometimes you sacrifice the chance at a higher ranked player or a higher up player. Let's put it that way. And I'll have to say this. And I was getting some texts from some people in the league. There were some good players that were going off the board, going from one section of the draft to the next, and then from that point to 10 picks after that. There were some pretty good players, the Will Johnsons of the world, the guys like that theoretically could have helped them, but they felt like, as you said, let's get more bites at the apple.
Well, I'm also very interested to know if they would have, because that's kind of what I asked John Spytek tonight, and he kind of answered a different question, but they traded down, and Will Johnson was going to be on the board. I think they thought, and he got picked one pick before they were going to be on the clock, and so they traded down again.
Right.
Now, if he was still on the board, would they have stayed there and selected? Maybe.
Right.
But if you don't get the guy that you want, all right, go back again, accumulate more picks. That's kind of how the process was. It also does, and I know people felt a certain way about our podcast yesterday. I will say this. It also does kind of make you wonder about yesterday. Like, today's was such a value-oriented draft. It was such a, hey, let's build guys for the future, is completely opposite of trying to go on a running back yesterday, it's totally different philosophy. It was like two different people running the draft yesterday and today.
What I'll say to that, and I think John Spytek's been pretty clear about this, and I give him a lot of credit, just be flexible enough to deal with whatever the situation might either call for or present itself, and be flexible and open-minded, because I don't believe in getting just lockstepped in one way of thinking. I think anyway, you have to be flexible to deal with whatever the situation might be. And I have
a different theory.
Okay.
Pete Carroll ran day one, John Spytek ran day two.
I don't think it goes. It's not that. I don't think it's that deep. I don't think Pete Carroll. I don't think it's that deep.
I would venture to guess that's what happened. And not even like, hey, I'm taking over. It wasn't like a hostile takeover. I think it was, hey, Pete, you're coaching this team. You got to go in. Get your guy on day one. Who do you want? Let's go do what you're going to do. And then for the rest of the draft, it's about me building the foundation of this team for the future. I feel like that's what happened.
Well, here's why I disagree slightly, because I think Pete Carroll loved a day like today. This is what he does. You go look at his drafts. He trades down. He trades up. He tries to get as many players as possible. And he made it very clear. He's made it very clear. And, I've heard this so many times covering him like I did over the years. It's not a cliche when he talks about competition. Sure. Throw as many players out there and let them compete for the jobs and let the best man win. And that's what it's going to come down to. And he basically delivered another stern message. The guys in this building, the holdovers, the guys that are currently in this building know what's coming. And as of right now, it's going to be 11 new players through the draft if things stay status quo tomorrow with the 6 picks that they have. And there's going to be, I guarantee you, a whole bunch of undrafted free agents that are in this building. The Raiders actually made room for even more by cutting, 6 players today? Yeah. 5 or 6 players today. Gone. Bring in some other guys. That's going to be a staple. Do not get in love. Do not fall in love with the roster, especially over this first year.
Especially the end of the roster.
Yeah, he loves getting a bunch of
284 transactions year one in Seattle.
Right. Exactly. So I would say accustom yourself to that, and as John Spytek said, if you're not willing to deal with that as a player, then you're not going to be here very long. And that'll Pete's been around long enough to see through all of that. And maybe that he already did with some of the players that they moved on from. That's neither here nor there. It's all going to play out the way it does. But I actually think that this was, believe it or not, this was a Pete Carroll special today, and I think he found a cohort in John Spytek who was more than happy.
So the other way around, Spytek did yesterday?
No. I think they both.
Two different people.
I think they're both.
Two different people ran these two drafts.
No. It's that. No.
Yes.
No. What you're?
Because there's not a consistent philosophy.
There's
between
no.
them. They were today was the exact opposite philosophy of what yesterday.
But you don't know what was. What was, if anything, was even being offered to them? What happened today was the other teams agreed to trades and met the Raiders.
I don't mean trading down. I don't specifically trading down. It's playing a value game versus not playing a value game, which is the smart way to build a roster, which they did today, and a very, very old school approach yesterday.
I don't think it was old school. I think they saw the value in this particular special player. We're talking about Ashton Jeanty. By the way, let's hear from Ashton Jeanty right now, because he did come out and speak. Hard pressed for anybody not to be impressed by Ashton Jeanty. This is a good player and a good kid. Let's hear from Ashton Jeanty.
Excited to be here, but yeah, it's been a pretty crazy 24 hours. Not much sleep, but just a lot of excitement, celebrating with my family, and last night I was pretty much up the whole night just thinking about what a great honor it is to be a Raider. I felt I always had a natural ability to, break tackles, make guys miss. And, that was the first position I started off playing. It was just, the way it happened when I, moved to Texas. We already had a lot of great guys at the position, so I kind of had to, wait my turn. But, I always practice, and I knew once the time came, I'd, become one of the best.
What's the biggest thing you can say that you took from being a Boise State Bronco that you believe can help you as a Raider?
Just the hard work, discipline, doing the things that nobody else wants to do. And that's what we did each and every single day there. And, it's paid off, and it's, helped me grow into the young man that I am today.
That's Raiders' new running back, Ashton Jeanty. I'm going to disagree with my good friend and colleague Adam. I think they just felt he represented the value that they felt was warranted at pick number 6, and today was a different day and a different set of scenarios and opportunities that presented themselves, and they are flexible enough. Were flexible enough to take advantage of when those opportunities were presented to them, or vice versa, whether they made them or reacted to them.
It was baffling to me. It was a totally different approach, totally different day. It was strange, and we don't have to dive down some of the same waters, but I think you come out of yesterday. I think the fans were ecstatic. I think you saw that for the most part. Fans were happy all over the place. I would say today the Raiders had a much, much better day, and I think fans are going to be much, much less excited.
Well, you know what you do, and the way I'm telling you, I'll be Mr. Cliche. The way you build great football teams is by stacking together great days. I thought yesterday was a really good day. I thought today was a really good day for the Raiders. We'll see what happens tomorrow. They got 6 more picks tomorrow. But let's talk about what happened today. So the Raiders, when they finally did pick.
I was going to address this earlier. Like, we're not – it's not like we're distracted and, texting people. Well, we are kind of texting. The draft is still kind of going on. So we have our phones just in case there's messages. Yes. But also, hey, any updates we've got, we want to make sure that you guys have the latest information.
Exactly.
So it's not like we're here texting people and not, ignore you guys, the viewers and the listeners.
Right.
We usually would not have our phones out necessarily on the table, but there are things that are happening.
So pick number 58, as it ended up being, the Raiders started the day with pick number 37 in the second round. They finished it with 58, picked up a couple of extra third-round picks for their trouble. And they went to the Lone Star State, Texas, for a wide receiver by the name of Dak Betch from TCU. And I got a chance to meet Jack at the Senior Bowl and watch him practice at the Senior Bowl. The game itself, he was the MVP of the game, had a walk-off touchdown reception to end the game, was fabulous throughout the week. I wrote his name down quite a bit in my notebook. He was just a standout. And he also has a a very compelling story. Yeah. His brother Tiger, who was a football player at Princeton, 6 years older than Jack, kind of his hero basically, was tragically one of the people that were killed on. Was it New Year's morning?
It was New Year's. Yeah.
New Year's morning or early morning when what they call a terrorist got in a truck and mowed down a bunch of people. Unfortunately, on Bourbon Street, and Tiger Betch, as surveillance cameras or footage eventually revealed, was actually a hero that night. He pushed a girl out of the way of the oncoming truck. Just seconds before the truck, hit him. Well, I seeing Jack at the Senior Bowl and winning the MVP honors of the Senior Bowl with that hanging on his back. I mean, it was literally just days, weeks, maybe not even just a week or so after all of that. That he went out there and in a very important part of your life, the Senior Bowl. You're meeting with teams. You're out there trying to perform as best as you possibly can. There were a lot of players that were drafted that were at that Senior Bowl. And for him to kind of compartmentalize everything and still be able to play, that told me something about him. So a compelling story on top of the fact that this is a pretty good football player.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, he was at LSU. He started his career there, had some success in a room with a really, really good receiving core. He talked tonight about still being very close with Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas was there at the time. So he was with some elite players there that moves on to TCU. Obviously has that great story. And then I thought the Senior Bowl performance, he was incredible, but I thought what was more telling is that his teammates set him up to succeed that week. And I'm not saying that he didn't earn what happened.
I'm with you on that.
What I'm saying is
sure.
He made such an impression on his teammates there that they all wanted to see him do well. They wanted to see him succeed. These are guys that are playing for their livelihood.
Right.
That are trying to put on an audition. It's a place where you would expect individualism.
Right.
And instead what you saw was not because of his story necessarily. I mean, it was part of it. But you saw guys that really embraced him, his work ethic, what he was doing, the attitude he was bringing to everybody, and they said, let's make sure he succeeds.
Right, and that was a product of, if you've never been in the Senior Bowl, you see the game on Saturday, and that's always a cool event, but it's really all about the practices. Right. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, practices where these are high-level practices where run by NFL coaches, and they put these players into situations that they're going to encounter in the NFL. You really get a good taste of football, and he was a standout against guys that, like I said, were drafted today and yesterday, really good high-level players, and he put it on those guys, and that earned him from his own teammates, and I know there was a lot of respect on the other side of the field. That earned him his own teammates saying, "Hey, look, let's make sure that he goes out on a high note." Yeah. He earned it in a lot of different ways. What does he practically bring to the Raiders team? He's not the fastest guy, but he was extremely physical. He's big. He's 6'1". Somebody said, "Oh, it's Hunter Renfrow revisit." I'm like, Hunter Renfrow? No, it's not anything close to Hunter Renfrow. Let's stop with that.
He's not elusive. He's not. It's
a 6'1", 215-pound guy compared to a wispy five. And we love Hunter, but five.
And we understand why those comparisons are made.
Yeah, I know.
Not the same player at all.
Yeah,
totally different player. He'll throw off a defensive back. He's not going to beat them with some fancy route in the red zone. He, instead of where Hunter Renfrow would make like 4 fakes and cut out and be wide open, he will run into a defender, throw him down to the ground, and then turn around and catch the ball. Right. More like kind of a post up. Like almost a rebounder in basketball, where he'll like shield physically, catch an entry pass, that kind of thing. Really physical player, but I think also getting the ball in space, and then he will. Yes. He breaks tackles. He said it's always his mission to never been tackled by the first man. Like Ashton Jeanty breaks tackles, who's physical. Kind of a theme of what this team is looking for, you would think.
Yeah, and I think that he projects as a contributor early on. He'll slot alongside Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, a fellow SEC guy, at least to start. He finished up. Where's TCU these days? They're the Big 12, right? They're in the Big 12. So he went from the SEC. By the way, shout out to Ed Orgeron. I mean, I know every time you think that you've heard the last of Ed Orgeron, here's Pete Carroll talking about, Jack was a recruit of Ed, and they were close. And when Ed famously or infamously had to leave LSU.
Sure.
Jack said, "I'm out of here," and that's how he ended up at TCU. So crazy that Ed's name got brought up tonight. I thought we had heard the last of Ed Orgeron.
You're never going to hear the end.
No, and that's I kind of like that. I always liked Ed O, a very unique guy. So I think that now you got your running back in Ashton Jeanty. You filled what I think potentially anyway a pretty big need at wide receiver. I don't think they need a number one wide receiver. I think Brock Bowers is the number one target. Jacoby Myers is a good, solid football player, and I think Jack slots alongside there. So all of a sudden, the weapons now are starting to look a little bit better than they have been in the past.
I think they need a number one wide receiver. I'm kind of in a different spot.
I don't think this draft had one, but yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the Tech McMillan camp, but I understand why people were not.
Mm-hmm.
That's a question. Like, that is another one of those things where it's one thing to say, hey, I've watched the film, I've seen how he plays, I see what he can do. I wasn't in the interviews, so I don't know. And it goes to the big storyline of this draft of Shedeur Sanders, of what he was on the field.
Oh, we'll get to Shedeur.
I wasn't blown away by what he did on the field. We've argued about Shedeur Sanders for months. Yeah. But I also wasn't in the meeting, so I don't know exactly what team saw. We've heard what team saw in those meetings, but I don't know. Like, people have said they don't think McMillan cares about football because he has other interests. I think that's kind of silly. I think he's a really good player, but to your point, I don't think there's a surefire absolute home run that everybody agreed on was the number one wide receiver. I think they need to find one at some point. Like, as good as Brock Bowers was, you don't want Brock Bowers doing what he did last year. That's not good for the team. Like, him cutting down a little bit on that production and having receivers do a lot of that work and then freeing them up for even more plays, especially in the red zone for touchdowns. That's kind of what you want Brock Bowers doing.
And I also think having a better quarterback is going to help that.
Of course it will.
Making better decisions.
Of course it will, for sure. And so I think that
the balance of the run
Myers
game
is a good number one receiver. He is an elite number two receiver.
Correct.
So you get a number one receiver guy in here, all of a sudden this offense is dramatically changed.
Yeah.
Much more so than a star running back. But besides the point, that I think would be very helpful for this offense. But yeah, you get other bodies in here that can, again, be physical. It's a different type of passing game. If you're trying to go to a physical type of receiver instead of a explosive speed type guy, but more weapons, sure. I don't think they're where they want to be. I think there's definitely some work to be done in that area. But maybe they didn't think that guy was available in this draft.
Yeah, and I kind of. By the way, the Ted McMillan thing, what Adam is referring to was there was a video, and in his defense, it wasn't a recent video.
No, it was years ago.
It was a few years ago when I think he was just starting out at Arizona, and he just was talking to somebody. I don't think he thought he was being filmed. Regardless, he basically said, "Yeah, I don't really I'm not a big football fan." Not the first time I've ever heard that from a professional sport.
He also took a lot of grief for being a volleyball player,
right? And then wasn't a film watcher. So. Quick story on that, personal story for me. I reached out to somebody in the NFL. I'm like, what should I make of this? Much to do about nothing. So I tweeted from an NFL, executive who, personnel guy, off that videotape, much to do about nothing. I got 3 texts from other people going, what? Yes, it is something from 3 other teams. Yeah. So
that's how teams feel.
To Adam's point, you don't know how that resonates with one person, let alone 32 different decision makers, and maybe, he didn't slide that far, as it turned out. In fact, he got drafted higher than what I think he was expected to, at least, as the draft got closer.
I think what the story was going to be on him all along was there's going to be teams that watched the good and said, oh, wow.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of oh, wow.
Because there was a lot of oh, wow with Ted McMillan. And then there's also, these are very deep diving on scouting things, but I also did have concerns about the fact that as I watched film on him, I noticed something that a lot of other people pointed out and said, takes plays off. Don't like that.
Yeah.
And then I heard an NFL guy who was talking about this, and he had said, look, he took plays off. His coaches told him to take plays off because he was running so much, not only on routes, but also after catches. and they wanted him to be on the field to take looks away and say, hey, they're going to commit 3 defenders to you. You get on the field. We need you to take this play off, so you're ready. You're ready to run a go route in this play, and then we're going to run a screen to you on the next play, and you're going to have to run the ball. So we're going to need you to take this play off and just draw the defense's attention, but don't do anything. We need you to rest up.
By the way,
which made sense to me.
By the way, you know who his offensive coordinator was at Arizona his first, or at least 2 years? Brendan Carroll. It's the new Raiders offensive line coach, who's Pete Carroll's son. He was with Jed Fish over at Arizona. So if there's anybody that knows Tet better than, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that knows him better than Brendan Carroll. So I don't know what influence he might have had one way or another, but that was the case. So he obviously knows Tet McMillan. All right. So after that, the Raiders stuck and picked at number 68 in the third round and selected Darian Porter, a cornerback from Iowa State. Now, interesting story, and it's actually kind of eerily similar to another old cornerback that Pete Carroll, had a history with. Darian started out as a wide receiver, big 6'3", fast, extremely fast. I think he had the third fastest 100 at the.
He's a combine guy.
Yeah, 6'3",
workout
4'3" guy. But he's a guy that moved from wide receiver to cornerback in 2022, and really didn't break through as a starter until last year. Now, here's the thing: I got a text from a personnel guy going, kind of an Al Davis pick, long, fast, but there's a lot of development that needs to happen. And one of the concerns from the person who reached out to me was he's 24 years old.
Yeah.
So usually when you're taking the high ceiling development guy, it's a young guy where those first 21, 22, 23 could be development years. And then you hope that he pops at some point in between then. 24 years old, now when does he potentially pop, if he pops at all?
Yeah, so young at the position. I think their hope would be
old in age.
Their hope would be that he looked pretty good, even though he hasn't played it much. So it's going to be a much shorter curve than you would expect out of a guy that hasn't played that much. I don't know if that's the case. To me, special teams guy right away.
Of course,
probably a pretty good contributor on special teams.
Was it 4 block kicks or something?
I think
like that?
5 total. I think he had 2 or 3 last year. John Spytek said, AJ already called and said, that's my gunner. Let's go. Let's get him out there. He's going to be a dynamic force on special teams. Maybe a little early to draft a special teams guy, but they have to think that he can play corner too. I'm not so sure. I don't know that you want to throw him out there right away. They're definitely better in zone than man, although it's kind of weird because he really projects from a trait standpoint as a man guy, but he played better in zone, which is a little bit weird.
This is going to be
interesting
a test.
Prospect.
It is.
Interesting prospect.
It is. And this is going to be a test study of sometimes, sometimes you just got to trust Pete Carroll. This is a guy that, he was a DB. He came up as a defensive back. He came up as a defensive backs coach, a secondary coach. That's how he cut his teeth. It's been his pride and joy, basically, his entire career. And I know our good friend Hondo keeps talking about how he has his eye for running back. I see it less for running back and way more for the secondary. That's really, where he's made hay in his career. So I'm gonna sit back and say, okay, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt on this one, because I see a project and I see an older project. But Pete obviously sees somebody that he thinks is going to be able to get on the field pretty early, and he didn't sound like he was going to hesitate to throw him out there.
You're right. It sounded like a Pete thing, but also I would say the Buccaneers with John Spytek used a lot of combine stuff and a lot of athletic score. And if you look at the athletic score compared to the production score, way much of an outlier. He's much more traitsy than he is production.
Right. Much more. Yes, exactly. So we'll see what happens with that. All right. So the last 2 picks, which were picks 98 and 99 in the third round, Caleb Rogers, a guy who played tackle but projects as guard. Pete talked about how he's going to start him out in the interior from Texas Tech. And then the pick immediately after that stays with the offensive line for Charles Grant from William & Mary, who started the last 3 years at William & Mary at left tackle. And as Pete said, that's the position that he's going to play, tackle. They're going to find out, can he play the right side?
Another kind of old guy, but he's a guy that played a lot. Been there, I think he was there 5 years. But a lot of production, a lot of ability.
Athlete.
All conference
athlete.
awards, and a very, very good athlete. He kind of even talked about it when we talked to him after and said, I know technique-wise I'm not there. He's like, I'm athletic as heck, and I will bring that, and I know that I can compete from an athletic standpoint with anybody at this level, even though I'm coming from a small school. But technique has still got to get there in terms of getting up to that level. But I think he believes he can get there very quickly because of the athleticism. I think that's why they took him again, athlete over technique/production. Another pick that the Raiders made in that regard here, and I think they can work with him, and they believe that.
And the offensive line coach is Brendan Carroll, who we talked about as the offensive coordinator at Arizona when Ted McMillan was there. That's Pete Carroll's son. I would imagine that he probably had a pretty heavy voice in this. Although, as I think it was John Spytek pointed out, who was really fired up was the new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. It sounds like this is kind of his prototypical sort of good athlete, guy that can move. We'll fix the technique and all that, but give me some athletes to work with, and I'll make it work from there.
Yeah, no question. And remains to be seen what, drafting a pair of offensive linemen, although, a little bit of position flexibility there.
Yeah.
But remains to be seen what that says about the contractual situation involving Colton Miller.
It's something that is a thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a thing. All right. Before we wrap this up, we are going to talk about tomorrow really quick. And the Raiders, as we said, have 6 more picks to make. It feels like, wow, 6 more picks, so 11 in all. We'll see if it ends up being that. Maybe it's going to be less. Maybe it's going to be more. But big elephant in the room. One, Shedeur Sanders, maybe inexplicably so, still remains on the board. He did not get drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft. I figured, I got a text from somebody that was Shedeur Sanders, and it was greater than sign Tyler Shuck. I'm pretty disappointed right now, and this is somebody that knows this business.
All right,
Shedeur
Sanders doesn't have near the arm Tyler Shuck does.
Yeah,
it's not even in the same ballpark.
This was his.
Now, if you want to say overall, there are, he
as
did
a quarterback,
some good things.
Yeah,
I think
because there was some bad tape of Tyler too.
Sure, his arm is
no doubt
next level, and I think that's why at the NFL level, I thought going into this, I thought Tyler Shuck would be right there at the top of the second round, if not sneaking into the first round. The performance he put on the combine, unbelievable. Obviously a little older, some injury issues. His arm is NFL arm. Probably the most NFL ready right now.
You know who has a good arm too? And this quarterback was taken. Dylan Gabriel. Say what you want about his stature and his 5'10", if that, on his tippy toes. But I'll say this: seeing him at the Senior Bowl, dude has a cannon. I didn't expect that from him. It didn't translate necessarily on tape, but when you saw it up close, you're like, oh, okay, this guy actually does have an arm. But I'm still surprised that he went ahead of Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah. With Tyler Shuck, NFL arm. We talked about
Shedeur
a lot. I thought from the beginning I was a little skeptical on Shedeur for a lot of reasons. My biggest thing was off the field. And I know we debated this back and forth. I think it's a circus. I think you're dealing with a circus. And I think now, especially, it's an absolute circus. It goes to, I talked to some people, and I was kind of joking around a little bit, but, some people from some NFL teams, behind the scenes, that I said, I mean, if he does go to your team, I mean, your content people are out. It's all his people coming in. That's how it's going to work. That's how they want it to work. And that's what the teams, I think, are kind of worried about and backing away from. Now, at this point, he's not going to be a starter. He's going to be backup somewhere and probably working his way up. What you don't want from a backup quarterback is a circus. You don't want that ever.
Yeah.
And so if he's your starter, it's one thing. It's Russ Wilson in Seattle, what it became there. It was a complete circus, and it got to Denver and it got even worse. You don't want that. From a starter, it's like, okay, you're a starting quarterback. We have to deal with what we have to deal with. You don't want that from a backup. You just don't.
Yeah. I agree, and it really does feel now that he rubbed some people the wrong way.
Yeah.
The off the field stuff rubs some teams, the wrong way. If the talent doesn't justify what we have to wrap our arms around every day and deal with every day, then this is a business where, we're not going to even entertain that.
No.
It's one thing if you're Brett Favre or if you're Aaron Rodgers, MVP caliber players, but if we don't see that in you, why even bother?
I was actually texting with a Colorado fan, somebody who's actually very close to the program earlier, and said, "You're telling me that he's not better than this backup or this backup or this backup?" And I said, He is.
Yeah.
What is that? What are you getting with that? That's the question. That's why he's not being drafted. That's why this is an issue. And somebody will take him. It's going to happen. I saw some jokes that hey, the CFL draft's coming up next week. I don't think that
he's going to end up in the NFL. He'll get drafted tomorrow, I believe.
Somewhere. I don't know that it's here, but he'll get drafted somewhere.
Right. Here's a couple of guys that intrigue me. If you're going to go quarterback, I do think of all the teams that might be set up for the circus, you got Tom Brady, you got Pete Carroll, guys that are respected coaches. Either they don't want to deal with it, and I respect that. But if they are okay with it, I feel like they're pretty equipped to tell whatever ringleader is out there to stand back, move off. We've got this handled. But maybe not, and maybe they don't want that headache. The other guy, Quinn Ewers from Texas.
Yeah, I would have thought. I feel, and I could very much be wrong. I feel like if they were going to take him, they were going to take him with one of those 2 back-to-back picks at the end of tonight.
Well, I think at that point, I don't think that they see many teams that are really, part of the art of drafting is to kind of be able to read the room, and so they're like, hey, if we want him, we're going to be able to get him. They got the 6th pick overall in the 4th round. In the 4th round, starting tomorrow. I think pick 108. Maybe they feel like they could get him there if they're even entertaining that thought. Here's another guy that couple other names. Jack Swear from Ohio State. Does he not just kind of reek Raider right now? I think he's a good football player, and I'm wondering if that's somebody that maybe at that pick number 108 that would catch the Raiders' eye.
Maybe.
Forgot that I'm asking a Michigan guy. Why would I do that?
It's not just that, though. I think there's questions about the translating to the next level for sure out of him. I'll say, because I mentioned to you before, that Jackson Slater is a guy that I love. Now, they've addressed offensive line already.
Yeah, I don't think they're going back there.
They have a ton of picks, and you keep getting bodies. I still think it's not the worst idea in the world to have a bunch of guys that can play on the offensive line. I would still think about it because I just think he's going to be that good, but somebody I would at least consider.
Joshua Farmer, Florida State defensive tackle, and Ty Robinson, defensive tackle from Nebraska. They haven't done the defensive line yet. That's why I brought up Jack's name. There's a LSU edge rusher that's still out there. But what about going into the interior? I think that's an area that they probably need to fix.
They need a linebacker. They need a
linebacker. The Oklahoma linebacker.
They need a linebacker at some point. There's not much question about that. So definitely be an area that I would be looking at. I think they also still need to address corner. That's definitely
and there are some corner. There are some remaining corners out there.
Yeah, I think you need to continue stacking in that room. Look, I think they have a lot of options. There's a lot of different places they can address. There's a lot of holes that they have to fill, and so we'll see what they do tomorrow. But they have plenty of picks. If they want to be aggressive, move up somewhere, they can do that. If they want to trade back, they can do that and get even more picks. Got a lot of roster spots available. So I think a lot of intrigue of what they do tomorrow, how they handle it, based on what they did today. But Raiders have a long way to go in terms of building this roster, but they're making progress.
Trying to put it together.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do as well. We will be back tomorrow with a full recap after all the action tomorrow night. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for all the support. Always hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Heck, if you want to gift Vegas Nation subscription to one of your friends or family members, it's super easy to do that and super inexpensive as well. Great value, all the great stories, all the great photos, the great videos, photo essays, everything. We got you covered podcasts. You're why we do it, and we thank you for your support. I want to say thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports for all their support. For Adam Hill, I'm Vinny Bonsignore. Talk to you guys tomorrow.